All right, well, you beat me to the punch. I'd just like you to join me in welcoming Anthony Tocco and Sean Mahalik from Carmela Specialty Foods. Okay. But before we get started, well, first of all, I can't catch a break, it seems like, because in the back, Tony just met Lance. Of course, Tony's like, oh, my wife's a big LSU fan. I'm like, oh, man, I just can't get a break. So anyways, I'd like to recognize a few people before we get started. Carmela has been a customer of Idealease of Detroit and Idealease of Flint for about 20 years. And are Scott and Todd Fracolosi in the office or in the audience? See a hand up there. Great. Well, you guys have done a phenomenal job of earning and keeping a wonderful customer like Carmela. So you should be commended for that. So well done. Is Tim Rayberg? Oh, there he is.
Tim, come on up. We want you to talk.
Come on up, Tim. No, we're not going to roast you today, Tim. We'd love to, but we won't. But Tim started off with Carmela, servicing him as a service manager, and has transitioned as the account manager now. And I'm sure that experience has done well for you, being in operations and moving to sales. But I can tell that there's a great relationship there with you guys. I almost feel like you and Sean are brothers. I said that the other night. But you've done a great job in the transition. I'm proud of you. I've known you for a long time. You and I basically cut our teeth together on White Line Express. But Scott and Todd, you were there too. But we learned a lot back then, and you educate yourself and move on, right? But Tim was beginning in service manager in the mid-1950s, and I was in my infancy in national accounts, and that's where we first met. But great job to you, Tim. Then Grace Tisdall. Is Grace out here? There she is. So Grace is kind of new to the team for the Carmela Foods group because Tim recognized the need as Carmela Specialty was growing and moving out of the Detroit market, moving into Ohio, Indiana, and in the future, who knows? But Tim called in Grace as Director of Regional Accounts to assist in the support as they grow into other affiliates. So, Grace, thank you. You've done a good job. Well, Tony, before we get started, did you want to say anything there? You had said something backstage.
Sure, Carrick. I wanted to thank you for choosing Carmela as the Spotlight Customer of the Year, and it's an honor to be here and talk to everybody here.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much.
I've learned a lot about your company and you too here in the last month, and it's a special relationship for sure. And with the number of units we have on order today, we'll be at about 40 units with you when everything's delivered. So thank you very much. We appreciate that. Sure. Well, let's get into it, right? So, Tony, it is an interesting story, how you started the company, and really like to hear your story and how you got started, including the name.
Right. So, the way that I started the company was, I had some great advice from my dad, and he told me, he said, you know what you need to do is you need to pick something that you're passionate about. And when you're passionate about it, it's not work. It's a passion and you love it. And growing up, where I grew up, the two things that I was always passionate about was the automotive industry and food. Where I grew up, was our neighbors were, the Fords and the Chryslers and the Dodges. And we're in Southeast Michigan, and we're a car community. And, my father's business, he serviced a lot of car dealerships and manufacturers. Like I heard somebody mention, Detroit Diesel. That was one of their big customers back in the day. But the even stronger passion was food. I'm the youngest of 6, and both my grandparents came here from Sicily. So, growing up as young as a 6 in an Italian family, food is a big deal, right? It was every night you know, there was dinner on the table, and it was, you know, if you weren't there at 5:30, you had to explain something really good why you weren't there. So growing up, being the youngest of 6, you know, I was always the tag along to my mom. So every day my mom had, you know, she had the produce guy that came right to our house and said, you know, hey, Miss Toko, we got some beautiful green peppers and zucchini and this and that. And I was just this little guy like this and, you know, standing by my mom's side listening to this whole thing. So after she bought the produce, then we got in the car and we went to the different markets. And she went to Nino Salvaggio's for, you know, for all the specialty stuff. And she had Yorkshire Market that she had to get her meat. And then we came back and she put me to work. So she's like, hey, you know, chop the onions, do this. So Carmela is my mom. So I just found it that, you know, I got my passion for family and food through my mom. So that's where the name comes from, Carmela. And we just celebrated. Yep. We just celebrated her 92nd birthday, and she's awesome. She's still going strong. So
Fantastic.
Yep. So that's the name.
Yep. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, and I just remember you had said that she, when you started, you were actually just delivering olive oils out of the back of your car.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yep.
And then grew it from there. And the growth is quite staggering. We'll get into that. But, you know, when you did start, and at first I'd like to understand what you did for trucks when you started getting to that size. And because 20 years ago, you switched from buying trucks, from what I understand from you, and started leasing. What were you doing before then? What compelled you then to start leasing from Tri-County?
So that's a great question. My very first truck was my 1990 Ford Bronco. So I started the company literally out of my garage, and I had a 90, you know, Ford Bronco. And that was my very first vehicle. And then when it couldn't hold more than 30 cases of olive oil, it's like, hey, I got to do something. So I bought a used, it was a van front with a camper back, and I was able to put 2 pallets in that truck. And it's like, okay, so I scaled it up to that. And then all of a sudden I tried squeezing 3 pallets and went down the road like this, and I'm like, I couldn't steer. And I was like, uh-oh, I got to do something here. So then after that, it was a used F650 that I bought from this electric company, Raymond D. Steger. I still remember it. Don't ask me how. And it was a used F650 with a 12-foot box, and it was a gasser with a 4-speed, and it caught on fire one day on the side of the road. So, you know, after that, I hired my first driver, and I bought a new Ford F650. So, and it had a Cat diesel in it and a 4-speed, and it was a nightmare. The service issues, I'll never forget one day when the dealer called me up and said, hey, the reason this clutch is not working is because one of your drivers, you know, disconnected this spring to make it easier to push the clutch pedal down. And I'm like, you got to show me this. So I went to the dealer to pick the truck up, and the service manager hops up in there, and he like gets inside the truck and turns himself sideways and like disappears. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm like 6'1", 280. You think I'm the only driver? You think I got up there and did that? So, you know, we had a hodgepodge of trucks. So we had Ford, and then we had some Chevys, some GMCs, and this one was white, this one was blue, this one was red. There was no continuity in our trucks, and you know, but it's all I could afford. You know, when you start a business, you can't just go out there and, you know, have the Mac Daddy of fleet vehicles. You do what you got to do, and we just worked ourselves up to it. And you know, I think 20 or 21 years ago, you know, our fleet consisted of maybe 4 trucks. You know, when we started with Ideal. I built my first warehouse in 2006, I believe, 2005 or
think it was 5.
2006 and
Yeah.
2005. And we actually had, I think we had 2 trucks, and I built the warehouse with 4 truck bays, and I'm like, I'm thinking ahead, you know? And now we got trucks all over the place. We got, you know, over 19 truck bays, and, you know, you do what you have to do. And we just got to that point where we started becoming a valuable supplier to our customer base, and we couldn't mess around with trucks anymore. And we took the step to go with Ideal Lease, and it's been a great relationship, you know, since then.
Great. Perfect. Love it. Thank you.
Yep.
So Sean.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, here you go.
Here we go.
Sean, we're going to roast you right now.
Yeah.
No. You started in 2009.
I did.
Right?
Yep.
And as you say, at the bottom.
Yep.
And
The
then,
very bottom.
And
Yep.
picking orders.
Picking orders on the night shift, right?
Yeah, well, it was day shift
Day
then.
shift
We didn't
back
even
then,
need a
yep.
night shift when I started. So,
Yep. So 15 years later,
Yep.
just last month, you celebrated 15 years.
Yep.
And now Vice President of Operations.
Yeah.
Congratulations
thank
to
you. Thank you.
Yep.
Yep.
You know, in 2009, you weren't in transportation. I think you moved around 2014 into transportation.
Well, 2014, I was just coming off of the night shift. So I wouldn't even have transitioned into transportation until just before COVID.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah, but I was running the night shift, so I was pretty, intertwined with the transportation team.
Yep.
So,
Well, you inherited then Ideal Lease of Detroit, and sometimes that transition doesn't go very well. Was it love at first sight, or?
yeah, so like when I got started and was taking over signing for new trucks and building the relationships, I'd already had a baseline of a relationship. And I think it started with the late Tressa over at Ideal Lease of Detroit at the service counter, right? Because growing from, somebody who was picking orders to a driver, to managing a shift and moving on, I had already had interactions with the service team, with Tim, before Tim was even
Right, he was a service
yeah,
manager that
before he
time,
was
right?
even the account manager. So, I had seen sales reps come and go, general managers come and go, just from being in the back and noticing guys come in. So it was a fairly easy transition. I think meeting the Fracolosis is pretty much the only thing that I had not really dug into when I took over.
Yep.
So it was easy.
Yep.
Very easy.
Yep. And so let's talk numbers a little bit. You know, when you started in 2009, Carmella had 5 trucks, right? And revenues were about $350,000 per week. And then 2014, revenues were about $550 a week. And you'd have a record overnight, what'd you say? Your record overnight revenue was $215,000.
It felt like we broke the system when
Right.
it was 215.
Yeah, we broke 200,000 a night.
And it hurt, I think I was at the warehouse for 14 hours. We had actually had to hire a third-party trucking company. We run a food show twice a year, so there's amplified sales for 1 week out of the month for the following few months after a food show. So I was riding shotgun, ran an entire night shift, and rode shotgun with a big grizzly, white beard guy dropping off pallets at our customers. So yeah, it felt like the system had broke.
Excellent. So where are you at now?
Yeah, so I would say probably as recent as 3 years ago, I think we averaged probably $1 million in sales a week.
Yeah.
This year, we have had multiple weeks where we broke $2.5 million. The record sales for a night has surpassed 800,000. So, it's a very, very steep climb from where we once were.
Yep.
Yeah. So Tony, I mean, the business has almost tripled in the last since COVID.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, sure.
Give us some insight. What happened?
So, when you owning and operating a family business, it's not just my immediate family that we have to take care of. It's everybody. And one of the things we have to do is we have to keep growing because everybody's needs are constantly growing. So my job is how do we keep this company growing? So we came out of that goofy time and I don't know, what was it, 2010, 11, when recession, depression, whatever you want to call it. And at that point, you know, our business consisted of, you know, 75% of our business came from the retail stores, and only 25% came out of the restaurant industry. So, you know, I'm sitting there, you know, brainstorming with my team, how do we keep this growing? How do we keep this growing? And the answer was, let's get food service to 50% of our distribution. We got all these great retail customers and all these top brands, and let's bring it to the food service industry. So in 2015, you know, we had this great idea, let's get it to 50-50, and we built a new warehouse, a 35,000 foot, all temperature controlled, with, I don't know, how many docks does that building have? That has eight,
Yep.
8 all refrigerated. We started our protein programs. We started a land-based protein program, a sea-based protein program, and we just stuck with our core values, which was quality. It's we sell the best. We sell what makes our customer base better. And we worked really hard at developing the restaurant side. We bought some new people into the company who, you know, most of them did a fantastic job. And, you know, we had this 5-year goal that at the end of, you know, 2020, we want to have 50-50 distribution. So we actually accomplished that early. So we finished 2019, and 2019 we were there. We did it in 4 years, you know, and we're all, you know, high-fiving and yeah. And then we start 2020, and there's something weird looming on the horizon, and sure enough, you know, COVID hit in March of, you know, 20, and I'm sitting there going, okay, you dumb shit, what did you just do? You developed 50% of your business as restaurants, and overnight, we lost 75% sales from our restaurant side of the business.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting there going, holy cow, you know, now what? So, you know, basically I got a great team around me, and we just all, you know, we put our heads together, and, you know, we said, listen, first and foremost, you know, we need to take care of our family, right? Of all our team members. And you know, that whole entire year and a half, I didn't get rid of anybody.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't drop anybody. You know, our food service sales team, there's a lot of young people with a lot of young families, and you know, that was the last thing I could do is, you know, send them on their way. And we took care of our team members, and we got together with our vendors, and we took care of our customers. And, you know, to give you an example, on the food service side, we had restaurateurs that they didn't know which way was up.
Right.
And they were scared. I mean, I could sense it. And, you know, at that time, I was on the board of directors for the Michigan Restaurant and Lodging Association. And they wanted me to speak at one of the meetings about, you know, supply chain issues and where this is going during COVID. And I told the director, I said, you know, before I speak, they wanted me to speak with, you know, 2 of my competitors. At that time, it was Gordon Food Service and Sysco. And I said, you know, before we get up there, I think the 3 of us should meet and kind of get our stuff together before we present. And I got on this Zoom call with these 2 guys, and I was just amazed at what I heard. And what I heard coming from my competition was, we need to take advantage of this crisis, and, you know, we need to put these guys on COD, and we need to streamline our offerings. And I'm like, guys, these people are fighting for their lives right now. And, you know, at that point, you know, I kind of shortly after that resigned my position on the board because I didn't agree with the way that it was going. And one of the things that I did, you know, my restaurant customers, I had about $1.4 million, $1.5 million on the street with them. And their cash flow just stopped. I mean, our governor in Michigan was a little bit crazy when it came to COVID, and they just stopped everything. And then we're fortunate, we have a home down here in Lighthouse Point. My wife and family came down here, and it was like, what's COVID? You know, I mean, the restaurants were booming, everything was going. So I came up with this idea to help our restaurant side of it, and I said, listen, the governor said you guys can stay open for carryout. So I know nobody has any cash flow, so what I'm gonna do is whatever you guys owe me, if anybody's got money, I'll take it right now and I'll discount it, right? And I had a handful of customers that wrote me checks. And then the other guys, the majority of the people, I just froze that receivable. And I said, you know what? If you're gonna stay open and you're gonna try and fight through this with carryout, you know, what I'm gonna do for you is I'm gonna just freeze that receivable. I'm gonna open up a brand new account. I'm gonna put that account at 14 days. Just do your best to pay me in 14, and then do me a favor and just by the end of the year, pay me. You know, and I did that, and that word spread because our competitors on the food service side were just pounding people for money. You know, and listen, we took care of our vendors, we took care of our people, you know, our family and our customers. And when we came out of COVID, our business just took off. I mean, people did not forget that at all.
That's great.
You know. And we were listen, we were extremely fortunate at that time for the other 50% of our business because that was retail, and it was the craziest thing that we've ever seen.
I think it speaks a lot. Sorry to interrupt. I think it speaks a lot to relationships, right? And I think that's the main message here, right? Is relationships with the vendors. When other people had fill rates, you know, of 20 or below %, we were northward of 60, 70%.
Yeah, we were running, I think we were running almost over 80% fill rates during COVID. And, you know, I had customers that I've been doing business with for 25 years since I started. You know, I had one customer that called me and said, hey, how's your stock on olive oil? I said, it's great. How is it on chicken stock? It's fantastic. How is it on tomatoes? You know, I'm like, we're good, you know? He's like, all right, I'm gonna give you an order. And what I want you to do is I want you to pull that order. And he said, you tell me how much that order is. And he said, just keep it somewhere in the warehouse. And when I need it, I'm gonna call you for it. And I'm gonna send a check to your office tomorrow. So the guy gives me an order and Sean's like, hey, this is like a $160,000 order. I'm like, okay, pull it, wrap it, keep it for the customer.
Plum market.
You know, yeah. Right? And those, you know, the trust that we have with our customer base, you know, we had carte blanche at retail because I had owners calling me saying, hey, you guys do whatever you have to do to keep our shelves full. You know, and we were in those stores 5 or 6, sometimes 7 days a week, sending truck after truck after truck. And a lot of times we paired up with our vendors and we were sending straight truckloads from our vendor right to our customer. Yep. You know, not even touching the product, just, you know, so we worked through it and we got through it. And as a result, you know, 2020, we were up like almost 15% for the year. And that was dropping 75% of 50% of our business.
Yeah.
You know, and then in the years to follow, you know, 21, 22, 23, it was all 22, 23, 24% increase every single year. You know,
you're developing solutions for customers.
That's it.
Right?
That's it. Just take care.
Fantastic.
We even brought in bamboo toilet paper. We don't sell a whole lot of paper products, right?
Is that soft?
I can't imagine. I didn't test it.
Yeah.
But yeah. It was basically, everybody remembers, you know, toilet paper was something that nobody could get hold of, right?
True.
So we're a specialty foods company and pivot and bamboo toilet paper and hand sanitizer and whatever we needed to do, you know?
Absolutely.
Pivoting.
I mean, it's just been phenomenal, and I appreciate you sharing the story because it's wonderful. It really is. Yeah. And so I'm going to switch it a little bit to operations, right? Yep. And for Sean, From your perspective, what's most important to you as it relates to a full-service lease vendor?
So I think with what full service leases allow us to do, right, is forget about, I have to deal with the people that are in the vehicle, right? I don't have to deal with anything about the vehicle. What's the guy's name that used to do the infomercials? Paul Ropel. It's just set it and forget it, right? I'm just able to just order the trucks, sign the paperwork, you know, and let you guys handle, you know, I said it in the video, let you guys handle the service. And as long as we're supported, and we have been so far, it's been very easy.
Gotcha. You said some things like you can't plan on downtime. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so, you know, a truck will break down. Okay, so we just went to dinner last night, right? You can't plan on downtime. And what I mean by that is we've got customers that are dependent on us, right? So when a customer goes to a restaurant and they order a rack of lamb, for example,
They want a rack of lamb.
they want a rack of lamb, right? So when I order it at the steakhouse last night and it's 86th off the menu, the first thing that went to my mind was, truck probably broke down, right? Cisco or US Foods or whoever, you know, they just steamroll right by and you'll get it the next time you get a delivery, you know? And we don't do that with our customers. If we're shorted something, if we out of stock something, we pivot. We've got an extra truck in the lot and we make sure we take care of the customer.
Yeah.
So,
great. So what other truck leasing companies have you worked with, either currently or in the past?
So in the past, so I inherited, I think, 2 Kenworth trucks through Pack Lease. I think we had, and then ended up re-signing with those guys. So I believe we have 4 Pack Lease trucks in the history, 4 Ryder trucks. We're forced to order some trucks through Penske because of an acquisition of a company in northern Michigan.
That we're leasing from Penske.
Yeah, so we had to absorb their trucks. But it's night and day, you know, between those companies, those big broadliners, and you guys. It's about service. It's about availability of trucks. For the biggest thing for me is, like I said, if a truck breaks down, we've got 40 vehicles, right? So trucks are in service regularly. Anywhere between 2 to 4 trucks are being PM'd or they've got some sort of issue, and every truck, like I said in the video, is gonna have service issues, right? But being able to support our fleet and have substitute vehicles immediately, you know, when you go with the big broadliners, I said this to the Fracolosis yesterday at dinner, we sign a contract. We all know what's in the contract as far as the language goes, and you've got a 24-hour period to diagnose a truck and figure out what's going on. But if that truck went down at 5 p.m. and I need a truck at 6 o'clock in the morning the next day, having the relationship to replace the truck before you figure out what's going on is what I get from Ideal Lease that I don't get from those guys. So I would be sitting there at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, waiting for a truck to be diagnosed before either giving me the okay to get a substitute vehicle or them fixing that truck and getting it back to us. So that's the difference for me.
Yep, excellent. And I'm going to move it over to Elevate. You've been using Elevate for 10 months now, right?
Yep.
And can you give us some insight in how you're using the monthly scorecard to change behavior?
Yeah, so Jerry makes it very easy, and it's something that I would vouch for and pushing. The grading system is very easy to read on the report. The slide shows that give us the trends from the trucks, super easy. You know, in Michigan, it gets pretty hot in the summertime, pretty cold in the wintertime. So there are some things where you're not necessarily going to stop a guy overriding the idle time, right? Because they want to stay warm or they want to stay cold, right? So what we get with Jerry in that personalized interaction is, hey, I know that this isn't going to improve this month. You got a heat wave coming, right? So let's pivot and let's take a look at your guys' hard braking, hard turn events, right? And I think even, I'm not sure what data they showed at yesterday's meeting, but we've even seen those come down. So it's a suggestion from them. It's a personalized application to our fleet and what we do. And it makes it easy to put a flyer out on all the drivers' manifests. Hey guys, we're going to focus on hard brakes, hard turns. And we see, you see it in other ways. It's not just savings in fuel, right? Which we run, I think it's close to 2 million miles, right? So with 2 million miles, we've saved almost, I think the last time I ran the numbers, it was 35 trucks, but almost a mile per gallon.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that
Which
that
equated
adds
to
up.
what, about 50,000?
Yeah, it adds up
Over
quick.
10 months.
Yeah, it adds up quick. So, you know, it's been great. I can't say enough about it.
Now, you mentioned to me, though, lost loads have been reduced. How?
Yeah, so
Explain that.
this goes back to the heat wave, right? So when we put out a memo saying, hey, we're going to focus on hard brakes, hard turns, it's a very simple process. The guys just focus a little bit more on their driving habits, right? Rather than leaving the AC on, it's a focal point on driving habits. So, you know, I get pictures all the time from, because I've grown through the company, right? The drivers have my phone number. They'll send me pictures. What the hell's this, right?
Sure.
Load's falling over. I know it's their driving, usually, you know. But
Yeah.
we've seen less returns coming back to us because loads have been tipped over, right?
Okay.
So it's very easy to see.
And then you have an incentive program as well, right?
Yeah. So, you know, usually with the grading program, if a guy jumps more than one letter grade, we take about $400 to $500 a month and allocate that for incentives for the drivers. With the Elevate cost, it's roughly $2,000 a month. But when you see just the fuel savings alone, it's an easy formula, right?
Yep.
I know that math over there was a topic of conversation before, but I think you still come out on top, you know?
Oh, Lance is always creeping into my world. No, thank you. Tony, just to, don't worry about the flashing number down there.
Uh-oh,
Right?
we're out of time, we gotta go.
No, we're not done. So you mentioned to me, well, first of all, in the opening video, and you know I love the comment, shoemakers make the shoes, right? And so you mentioned to me that Idealease is behind the scenes, and that we help you grow.
Right.
How do we help you grow?
So the biggest, you know, the biggest way that Ideal helps us grow is, you know, I'll go back to, you know, probably 2022. We had an opportunity to go down to Columbus, Ohio. So, you know, me being a U of M fan, go blue, I was never crazy about Columbus, but the amount of business we're doing now in Columbus, it's not such a bad town. But anyways, you know, it's like I like to tell people, like, if this is the map of Michigan, you know, Carmela is right here, and we service all the way up to Mackinac Island, and then, you know, from this side to this side. And what our goal was to get as far south as we are north. Mm-hmm. So we had an opportunity with the Cameron Mitchell Group out of Columbus, Ohio. I think they're up to 100 units now, restaurants. And they sent their chief procurement officer and two of their head chefs up to our campus, you know, to check us out because they wanted to start doing some business with us. They had heard about us. And, you know, the second this guy walked into culinary, we have a beautiful culinary center. Our campus is not a normal food distribution warehouse, and you guys saw in that video. But, you know, this guy, Jeremy Matson, was like, hey, when can we start?
Yeah.
You know, and the first thing that I say is, Jeremy, I have to make sure I can get the equipment first to get down to you. I know I have the food. I know I have the drivers, all this stuff. I got to make sure I have the equipment to get down to you. Because it took, I think we started with sending 2 trucks to Columbus right out of the chute.
Yep.
So I tell Sean, hey, you know, they want to start in Columbus. And Sean's like, okay, great. You know, when do they want to start? I said, April 1st. And he's like, it's like mid-March. He goes, that's like 2 weeks. I said, yeah, so let's do it, you know. And, you know, I said, I need to get back to Jeremy with an answer. You know, when can we start? And I think it was either the end of the day or the next day. Sean's like, we got to figure it out. Go ahead and go. You know,
Reynolds from Rush and Columbus.
Yeah, so at that point we didn't have to get Rush. We were just running from Detroit down there and delivering. That actually was another scenario of, I don't know, it feels like it was only 2 months ago. Tony walks into my office and he's like, what do you think it'll cost us to service Indianapolis, extend do more business in Columbus, Dayton, and Cincinnati. And those conversations I know mean we're starting probably in the next 2 weeks, right? So I call
I
Tim.
soft sell it a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, it's, you know, so I call Tim right away and tell him, you know, I need 3 trucks down there immediately. Went down and met the guys at Rush and Dayton, and, you know, it was just like that. So it's about the quick pivot, right?
bet.
And being able to add. So.
Yeah, so they allow us to do what we know how to do, because I mean, if you can't get, we can get the supplies, we can get the steaks, and we can get the lamb racks and the lobster tails and all that stuff, but if we don't have the trucks to get it to the customers, what good are we?
You bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Nope. Thank you for that.
Yep.
And I know we've skipped through a few things just because of timing. It's been great, but I do want to get this one question in, and
Yeah.
this is that curveball, right?
Oh,
No,
great.
it's
Great.
when deciding a lease vendor, what is the most important factor in your decision?
You want me to answer it?
Start there.
I mean, I'll start, and I think Sean kind of, you know, one of our core values is, you know, we at Carmella, we're family run and family operated, you know, or family owned, family operated. And in today's environment, those companies are few and far between now. And because we are, you know, we stress that family owned, family operated, you know, environment and culture, we like to do business with family owned and family operated companies, you know, and that's what we have. And
Yeah.
that's our number one, you know, our number one decision.
I feel like I sit across the table from what seemed like snake oil salesmen, right? When I'm dealing with the big broadliners. They only care about the bottom line, right? Not the level of service. And we've been taken care of great with Ideal Lease of Detroit.
Yeah. So, I mean, does pricing come into the equation?
You know, with a lot of people, it does. But, you know, what people fail to realize is what is cost, you know. And, you know, when I have a new customer that you know, does all the suites at the Indianapolis, you know, Brickyard, the Motor Speedway, you know, and he orders, you know, you know, next week for the race, I'm going to need, you know, 10,000 8-ounce Wagyu burgers, you know, and it's like, okay, so if my truck breaks down and I don't deliver on time, what's price? What's cost?
Right.
You know, and I see all those, you know, those variables that go in behind it. So it's not always just about what's that price at the end of the month or what's that price on the bill. It's what are the costs,
Yeah.
you know, and that's what's critically important.
You know, Sean, you had an interesting comment about price.
Yep. I think the cost of the trucks and what we were signing for, I think Tony's done a phenomenal job of taking the money and dumping it right back into the business, right? So I think as we were growing, the price mattered a little bit more, right? And now that we've established ourselves in the business and we've got a reputation of service, it's important to, you know, like Tony said, it's the cost, right? So taking that into account and we all know that there's been increases over the last few years,
Yep.
right? So every time I go to Tony and have to break the news to him that, you know, we're experiencing another increase, well, you know, the chips aren't available. We're taking those out to get our trucks a little bit faster, you know. It's been a difficult ride dealing with increases, but
Sure.
you know, it's a part of the business at this point,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah, one of the things you said that I like to hear was, you know, beginning, and not only because of that, but in the beginning, you don't have a relationship. So pricing is more of a
Determining factor.
determining
Yeah,
factor,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And now with the relationship, and you know what you have from a service perspective,
Yep.
it's not that much
Exactly.
of a,
Yeah,
of a
for sure.
factor. So, no, I thank you very much for joining us. I think you have a kind of a story I'd like you to throw out there. It's interesting how an account manager can have an effect on the service you provide your customers.
Yeah, and Tim Rayberg, put your hand up, Tim, where you at? He's back there. He's been with you guys for what, 30 years?
Yeah.
Kind of followed the same path as me, growing from a service manager into an account manager. So we have 3 different remote buildings, one up in Grayling, one out in Grand Rapids, one down in Piqua, Ohio. We had a service issue out in Grand Rapids. This has actually happened twice now, where Tim has hopped into a substitute vehicle in Detroit, driven it all the way out to Grand Rapids, 150 miles in the middle of the night, and rode back with our transfer semi driver, Phil. And I think Tim and Phil are maybe 1-2 trips away from exchanging Christmas cards for the family. You know, Tim gets his music playlist from Phil now. So yeah, that's the level of service that we're given with Ideal East of Detroit. It's been great.
You bet. You bet. We're short on time, but if anybody's got a pressing question that they would like to ask our customers here, do you have? I got one here. You got it, Tommy.
Tony, we'd love to have you in Tampa, brother.
That's right.
Yeah, we actually we have some pretty good opportunities down here,
Yeah.
you know, to expand. Yeah. But we got our hands full right now with our expansion, so
sure.
never say never.
Right.
Yep, but we'll call you.
That'll be the
Yep.
that'll be the
Wasn't a
next
question,
curveball
Tom.
he drops on my plate. You
Yep.
know?
All right. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thank you, guys.
Good.